Good day, people. Welcome to my presentation, whose title is ITIKI Success Story, Classic Application of Design Thinking. My name is Muthoni Masinde. I currently work as an associate professor at the Central University of Technology in Free State, which is in South Africa. Given that this year the IST-Africa conference is a virtual one, so we are not meeting in person, I decided to include my photo here. ITIKI, the abbreviation on the logo you're seeing at the bottom of this screen. It's a project where we've developed a drought prediction tool that integrates modern science with indigenous knowledge. So the abbreviation, the I, the first one is for information, T is for technology. The next two letters, I, K, is for indigenous knowledge. And we make use of artificial intelligence, in particular artificial neural networks. So the last I is for intelligence. So it's there for information technology and indigenous knowledge with intelligence.
Farming remains a pillar of most economies in Africa. The majority of production comes from small farms that heavily rely on rain. So if it doesn't rain, the farmers have a problem. They need to prepare and minimize the negative effects. Muthoni Masinde is a computer scientist in South Africa who created a website and mobile app that warns farmers about looming drought conditions.
I grew up in the village, and I noticed that the farmers in the village do not have any form of science to tell when to plant or even where to plant and when. So they use indicators that they watch or they sense in the environment. They watch insects, they watch behavior of animals, and then they make a decision. I think it will rain in 2 weeks' time, so they prepare their land.
The tool combines ancient African knowledge with scientific data, for example from weather stations, to come up with predictions. Masinde is partnered with the South African Weather Services and the universities of Free State and KwaZulu-Natal. Today, the project is recruiting a group of community liaison officers to collect knowledge from the local farmers. Masinde says the app has been a great success. It's currently being used in 3 African countries by over 10,000 farmers, the majority of which are in Kenya, where Masinde is from, but also in Mozambique and in South Africa.
The first one is the information they're giving to our local scale farmers.
The mother of 4 has been invited to speak internationally, and she's won numerous awards for her work. Her project has received funding from both the South African and American governments.
They managed to avoid what many researchers go through. We call it innovation valley of death. Come up with innovation, dive into the valley, and never come out. But I got out of that, and I can stand on the rooftop and say, I did it.
Having listened to the video on what ITIKI entails, I would like to explain in this section what the motivation behind the project was. First and foremost is that there's so much information being generated today. Massive information that has led to the situations whereby we are all drowning in data. But unfortunately, in many cases, we're starving for insights. And this exactly is the same situation our small-scale farmers in Africa are faced with. There's so much information on weather, on radio, on TV, newspapers, on mobile phones, but in many cases, there's almost nothing for the small-scale farmers to use in their day-to-day decision-making process. So 2 problems here. First, the small-scale farmers do not have tools to respond to the current wave of climate change and droughts that happen to be extremely rampant in Africa. And the second problem is that more than 80% of these small-scale farmers rely on rain-fed agriculture. And rain can be very unreliable. When it fails, these small-scale farmers are left with nothing. And in most cases, they are not able to tell beforehand if it will rain or not. Having looked at the problems that are facing our small-scale farmers, here are the research objectives that were designed in order to solve those problems. The first one was to come up with a highly accurate and affordable drought focusing tool that can enable small-scale farmers in Africa to know when it will rain, how much it will rain, the pattern of the rain, so that they can be able to know when to plant, what to plant, how to plant it. And this tool is able to help them boost their yields, their incomes, and their level of resilience. For ITIKI, in order for us to be successful, we looked at the community participation in the project. So we involved them in building the tool, and this enabled them to accept it because they saw it as their own tool, and they are able to adapt it to different situations because they understand it and they accept it as their tool. In this work, we've adopted the definition of design thinking by Brown 2008. Design thinking is a discipline that uses a designer's sensibility and methods to match people's needs with what is technologically visible and what a viable business strategy can convert into customer value and market opportunities. So design thinking has 4 characteristics: human-centeredness, possibility-driven, options-focused, and iterative. Of most important for ITIKI project was the human-centeredness, and because drought prediction for small-scale farmers, and especially the fact that we're using indigenous knowledge, people's knowledge, they own it, they generate it. We needed to design a tool around them, with them, so that it would work for them. And this is what made it a success. A design thinking revolves around ethnography, which really forms the pillars for design thinking. At this point, I'd like to play the video by one of the professors who teaches design thinking, so that you can be able to comprehend the theory behind design thinking. It's about 2 minutes.
In this first session, I really want to explore the definition of design thinking. I want to explore what design thinking really means, or at least what I think it means. It's a term that is somewhat controversial, particularly the thinking part, since, as you'll learn as we talk more about it, this approach to decision making is about a lot more than just thinking. So what else is it about? Well, let's start with a popular view of the creative process. I call this view the Moses myth. In the Moses myth, innovation is a miracle that results when a special person raises his or her hands to God. The Red Sea parts, the iPod is born, pick your own utopian outcome, the message is the same. It's that innovation takes a special gift, one that most of us just don't have. Like most myths, this just isn't true. Of course, there are creative geniuses. No one would want to deny that truly extraordinary minds like Steve Jobs exist. But genius is not the only way to produce innovation. And believing the Moses myth undermines managers' confidence in their own abilities. And what I want to do is just ask for equal time to tell a different version of the story of innovation and where it comes from. This is a view of the creative process that was offered by an employee of Apple a few years back, and it is one of my favorites. Not because I agree with it, but because I think it captures the Moses myth beautifully. That old story that innovation is a black box, it's a hopeless tangle, and the ability to think creatively is a mysterious one that belongs to a special class of people. In this class, we are going to respectfully disagree with that story and tell a different one. Rather than waiting for Moses to show up and part the Red Sea for us, we are going to figure out how to build bridges to cross over to the other side, to that promised land of the new future, so that we can reliably manufacture our own miracles. So let's look at a different view of the creative process. In this view, the tangled mess morphs into a systematic series of questions. The first, and there you have it. Just 4 questions that will help us build the bridge to more innovative solutions and manufacture our own miracles without relying on Moses. And so this is what I'm going to be focusing on in our time together. Design thinking as a problem-solving approach that asks 4 questions and that is human-centered, possibility-driven, option-focused, and iterative in its approach. Let me talk about each of those for a moment.
In the case of ITIKI, we went through the iterative steps, 5 of them, in order to come up with the tool. The first one is the listening, talking to the people, observing them, visiting them over and over again, using focus groups so that we're able to understand how do they really predict drought? How do they know the coming season will have less rain? Then the next step is the defining step, where we needed to develop insights into the core problem or the need that the farmers had. The third one is ideate. Here, it involved building of solution ideas, considering quantity of options. What options did the farmers have? For instance, were we going to use a mobile app? Are we going to use SMSs? Are we going to put the information on our website? Sieving through these ideas so that we can be able to develop a solution that worked for them. The fourth step was prototyping, so that we could give them a working system that they could try out, give comments, then we'll take that home and refine it over and over again. And then the last one is testing. Give them a chance to use it in real life, from one season to another, from one community to another, so that we're able to learn what works and what does not work for them, so that the whole process starts all over again, iteratively, like it is the case with design thinking. So, like I said before, the key to success here was participatory, community-driven, integrating farmers' indigenous knowledge on drought, and this instilled confidence in the system. We adopted 4 of the design thinking paradigms concepts. We did brainstorming, storytelling, prototyping, and learning launches. In this slide, I just included pictures of some of the sessions we held. The first picture on top left was a brainstorming session with the farmers and the ambassadors in Kenya. The second one, top right, is with the farmers in South Africa, a place we call Pietermaritzburg. At the bottom left, a brainstorming session with our farmers in Mozambique. And on the bottom right, here's an illustration of scenarios for drought prediction. Here we were using fuzzy cognitive maps to map what the prediction indicators meant. So for example, here we have an indicator that says if you have many number of boys being born in a particular season, that will be an indicator of good rain. And then the second one is quantity of wild fruits. A specific wild fruit would indicate that the oncoming rain will be a good one. So we use fuzzy cognitive maps, a well-recognized mapping strategy in computer science, to be able to present all the scenarios they gave us for the drought prediction. Then with that, we came up with a series of prototypes. The very first prototype for ITIKI was way back in 2012, the very first one with orange and blue colors. Over time, as we did launches and testing and iterative of the previous, the 5 steps presented previously, we kept on improving the prototype. In the middle is the latest prototype we have, and on the right is just a login screen for the prototype. At this stage, we've realized that farmers need a little bit more than just drought prediction, so we're even incorporating things like cropping decisions. They can take pictures of a particular pest on their crop and send it to a crop scientist, who would then diagnose and revert to them as to what kind of problem that is and how they can solve it. Major outcomes. We've been running the project since 2013, but from 2017 we started running it as a commercial project after receiving funding from USAID. From 2017 until now, we've been able to expand the original operation that was in Kenya to almost slightly over 10,000 farmers. We also have farmers in Mozambique. As you can see the numbers here, these numbers have since grown. And we also have farmers in South Africa. For each farmer, we also do collect statistics. One individual farmer who is a customer is associated with a number of family members or households. Those are the numbers we have there. For Kenya, 3,090 individual farmers translate to 14,000 people in a household. And also notice that the nature of the small-scale farming in Africa is such that it's female-driven. And we are also keen on checking the statistics thereof. Slightly over 70% of our customers are female. We've also been collecting statistics on how much farmers improve in terms of the food they produce. And we've been able to observe over the 3 years that the project has been run on commercial basis, that in Kenya, for example, there has been up to 14% increase in yield. In Mozambique, it's 7%. In South Africa, we haven't calculated the percentage, but overall, the entire project, we have 11% increase in yield. This is a great success, and we attribute this, like the paper says, to the use of design thinking for innovation, because you listen to the people's feelings. You design something that they relate with. You meet them at the level of their needs, and hence the success of ITIKI project. In conclusion, it's true that the challenges that the small-scale farmers in Africa are facing are many, and solving drought alone in isolation does not solve all their problems. More solutions are required. Currently, we are faced with COVID-19 epidemic, and that is seemingly overriding everything else that the farmers may have achieved. And recently, in the last 3 months or so, there has been a locust invasion, especially in Kenya, and spread to Uganda. Against such things which are beyond the control of a human being, affect the farmers significantly, and a solution for drought prediction alone cannot work in isolation. In our little sphere, we are trying to expand the ITIKI tool to include other services. Currently, we almost completed a market price platform, because we realized that even if the farmers produce enough or more than enough and they need to sell it, they have no access to market information. This is also both for their farm inputs, and sometimes they get exploited by middlemen. So in the coming year, we'll be able to provide market prices as a freemium for the farmers who are already using ITIKI drought prediction. This will enable them to get to the market easily. Then we've also upgraded ITIKI to ITIKI Plus, like I mentioned. Now it's able to give cropping decision to the farmers in the short, medium, and long term in terms of a decision support system. And that brings me to the end of my presentation. I do thank you for listening. You can send me questions using the email provided in the second slide of my presentation. Thank you. I would like to acknowledge funding that this project has received from 2 sources. The first one is a multi-government fund under the project Securing Water for Food, a Grand Challenge for Development, with the funding number as indicated here. And the second one is by South African government through the National Research Foundation. The project is called Tutuka Funding Instrument through the grant number that is shown here. Thank you.